Está demasiado atrasado, hermano. 12 minutos atrasado está.
Please welcome Matías Duarte.
Good morning. Like many of you, when I was a child, my parents took me to Disney World. And I got to meet the characters and the adventures and places from my imagination became real. I was literally transported into another world. But what I remember most of all, to this day, from that trip, was under the geodesic dome, where there was a special exhibit. It was a behind-the-scenes look at how they combined creative skills of the world's best animators, illustrators, costume designers, craftsmen, and technical know-how of cutting-edge engineers, roboticists, programmers, to make all of these fantastic experiences. They called them Imagineers, and I was captivated. My parents could not drag me away, and I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. My name's Matías Duarte, and today I'm excited to work at Google because we are committed to helping designers and developers make the worlds of their imagination real. Over the last 10 years, I've worked at a lot of different parts of Google. On Android, from Gingerbread to KitKat, on the very first voice interfaces that would become the Google Assistant, had a chance to help refresh the Google logo, and work on material design and eventually Google Material, which refreshed all of Google's products. The type of work that I've had a chance to focus on, we call it UX, UI, front end, creative coding, whatever you want to call it. It's really no different than those Disney Imagineers. We are blending artistry and technology to create completely new experiences, digital worlds. These digital realities are sometimes flights of fancy, but they're also the virtual places where we do business, where we shop, how we find our way around the real world, how we connect to other people. And Google wants to help you bring those worlds of your imagination to reality. Just like Disney Imagineers, it takes the very best creatives and the most talented programmers. That's why I'm excited to see all of you here, because you are skilled, creative, passionate, clever. But we know this kind of work is not easy. In fact, it's never been easy. Not from the very earliest days of our industry has it been easy. If you think back, what is that first most inspiring milestone for UX, for great, delightful digital experiences? What comes to mind? Is it the Macintosh? The Xerox PARC Alto? Maybe some of you are thinking of Douglas Engelbert's mouse. I like to think of the PDP-1, way back, specifically Space War. This is often considered the very first video game. And despite the monochrome display, there's a real careful attention to detail in how these rockets are rendered. Now, there was a problem in the very first versions of Space War that is often overlooked, which is that it's hard to play the game if you can't tell how your rocket ship is moving. And that rocket ship moving across that empty black screen is hard to understand. The human eye perceives motion relative to other objects. So the creators figured out how to add a star field that was really required creativity because it was pushing that machine to its limits, as hard as it is to believe. They worked within the constraints of the program. And the result was thematic, it was subtle, and it was hugely ergonomic. And it's that kind of problem that, for me, exemplifies what is hard about our work, but also what's really fun about our work. Taking insight about cognition and perception and combining it with artistry and pushing technology to the limits, honestly. Now, how much time do we actually get to spend on those fun problems? I see teams struggle just simply to visualize solutions, to align on solutions across the team, to deploy the solutions without really important nuances falling between the cracks, and be overwhelmed by all of the different platforms and requirements that they have to handle. Well, Google is here to help with tools, resources, technologies that help you worry about the problems you find fun. And I'm excited this morning to share some of our current and our future investments. Now, you're probably not surprised I'm going to start talking about material design. In 2014, we introduced material with design guidelines that were cross-platform, covering web, Android, and iOS. And the idea was to help designers build on the same foundations that were trusted by billions of Google users. And we also started providing components that, for each of those platforms that would help engineers quickly assemble those designs with fidelity, with accessibility, with internationalization baked in, so that designers and developers could focus on the parts they found fun. In 2018, we introduced material theming. Now, material theming helps you build a complete design system that is based on the same foundation that unifies Google's products, but wholly customized for you, for your brand, for your look and feel. Instead of having to painfully tweak each widget, you customize them with high-level style parameters. And design choices are made consistent, not just within a product, but perhaps across a family of products you produce. And it's good not just for your products, but for your teams, because everyone can work with the same styles within the system itself. It's formally encoded. Now, we built material theming, so it scales with you, and it's easy to onboard. Material widgets help you build the building blocks of your app, and then you use theming to tailor the experience as you want to. And Lyft was one of our launch partners. They used the theming system and our components to make something that I think is really iconic for them. Material is not here to constrain your creativity, but to give you a head start, to eliminate any of the work that you don't find fun. And if you stick around till 12:20, Yasmin will be here to tell you how to get the most out of material theming for your projects in Flutter. Now, second, I do want to talk about Flutter. It's why you're all here. And it's another commitment that Google is making towards helping you. I've personally been a huge fan since the very beginning. I've been wowed by its impact, and Tim is going to tell you more about momentum. But I have a personal testimony I want to share about how easy it is to use and what the value of that rapid, instant feedback it brings. On my team, I've seen more people become full-fledged prototypers and start to play with becoming front-end developers using Flutter. It was a doorway that opened for them, and that is hugely inspiring to me. Now, since the pre-beta, Material has been a close partner with Flutter. Flutter has pixel-perfect implementations of Material, and Material components are the default UI library in Flutter, which means nearly all of the apps made with Flutter today are built with Material components. And of course, all of Google's Flutter apps, which there will be more to come. Our team has been delighted at how easy it is to faithfully bring quality and nuance that we need in Material to our Flutter implementations. Flutter's architecture has made it really easy for us to do things like the complex composed lists, or capture the nuance of the collapse animation in the flexible app bar headers. Flutter made it practically automatic to add animations to layout transforms like we have in the Fab bottom bar. Makes it really easy to add custom components like the pill tab selectors or the bottom sheet transitions. And of course, Flutter made it easy to capture the nuances that research shows are essential to usability, like you see in the text field labels. Now, we've also brought material theming to Flutter, and the inherited widget pattern means material theming can be ubiquitous in your Flutter apps. Every material component has theming baked in. If you change a color scheme or text scheme or border style, you see it everywhere. Most of all, the themed widgets pair really nicely with your custom ones, so you can make them consume the theme and keep every style tweak in your project in sync. And Material is betting really hard on Flutter. We have our own dedicated team of Flutter component engineers, and they are so passionate that they make sure the latest designs get to Flutter so fast that happens sometimes before we even have a chance to update our guidelines. We've recently doubled the size of our Flutter partner team, and we're going to continue to work really closely with the core Flutter team. We're working on continuous enhancements. We're going to bring the newest material themes as the default for new Flutter apps. We're updating the naming taxonomy, and we're going to continue to make sure our APIs are as easy and ergonomic for all of you for the latest versions of Material as they were for the first ones. I hope it's clear that Flutter and Material are not just two projects that work well side by side, but they're part of what Google sees as a suite of solutions that we're investing in. And together, they're here to help you make your imagination real, faster, easier. Now, Flutter and Material are going to get a little bit better with a third investment from Google today. It's easy to forget that behind all of the animations and the beautiful images, most UI is still primarily text. And big brands invest in expressive type for that reason. Now, one of Google's oldest investments in creativity and accessibility launched in 2010 with an open source catalog of hundreds of beautiful typefaces. Google Fonts gave everyone power to use the perfect type anywhere. And you can see these fonts all over the web in places like Williams-Sonoma and IKEA and Cole Haan and Pottery Barn and countless others, almost literally countless, because our global scale font serving infrastructure is so powerful, so useful, so popular that to date we have served 34 trillion fonts. That's a big number, thank you. Every 2 seconds, we fulfill another 1 million font requests today. That's the time it takes for me to say, Google Fonts for Flutter, that's another 1 million. And today I'm happy to announce Google Fonts for Flutter. It is now easy to get custom fonts into your Flutter app. After importing the package, you'll get autocomplete suggestions directly from Google Font servers. It'll download the fonts, add it to your app for you. And with font reload, with the hot reload, yeah, call it font reload, I like that. But it's like practically designing right in the app, right? That is so cool. Google Fonts for Flutter is dynamic and cached, which is great if you have a content-rich product, right? Which always wants to pair the perfect typeface with different articles or different pieces of content. But that same dynamic approach is also really useful for every developer who cares about their app size. And you all do care about your app size, right? Using our dynamic font serving can help you make sure you only include the fonts that your users need when they need them and no more. And Google Fonts is available today on pub.dev. Google Fonts, Material, and Flutter are here to help you make more beautiful, more usable digital worlds today. And I cannot wait to see your imaginations come to life with them. But all of this is just the beginning. Google will continue to invest, and honestly, we think we need to invest because we're on the cusp of some really transformative changes in our digital world. Old screens are not going away, and new screens are being added all the time, and devices without screens. Users want to experience your products, your services, and brands across all of them. We think of this as a world of ambient computing, which is going to require us to stop thinking about device first and start thinking about the user first and their experience first. We're going to have to design cohesively for the users no matter where they are. And you see a little bit of this in our smart display devices, where Google has chosen Flutter for its flexibility and power, and it has a beautiful expression of Google material in a totally new type of display. You see this in our continued commitment to desktop applications. Material is rolling out new patterns with rich controls and even denser layouts. And yes, you can expect these to be available in Flutter for desktop. We are excited about this ambient future. And we're excited to see how we can help. We're experimenting with even more audacious ways that we can help you focus on the user and not the device. Now, I'm going to show you some ideas that are not yet ready, but they show you the kinds of problems that we want to help you with in the future. It's really frustrating how designers and developers continuously struggle with handoff headaches. There's a lot of amazing progress, but could we go further? Could we have a real WYSIWYG experience where we can manipulate a complete production UI, where we're manipulating the actual widgets and the custom code that's actually used at runtime, and save that UI as a source file that can be checked into a build directly? Wouldn't that be cool? And here you see one of our experiments doing just that, visually changing a layout element inside a complex Flutter widget hierarchy of a full UI while preserving fully functional data bindings, and then we'll update it with hot reload. This is using Flutter both as an engine for an editing environment and as a runtime to deploy. Does that seem exciting? I think it's exciting. Another challenge of this ambient future is the sheer logistics of deploying a coherent experience across all these services, across multiple teams. Could we have a single piece of UI code that describes all of the different bespoke layouts a program might run on? Wouldn't that be cool? And here you see an experiment where a series of unique layouts composed of common elements with data bindings themselves are dynamically reconfigured according to a partition map. And this is saved as a single Flutter UI, going beyond responsive to a truly adaptive single source. Would that be helpful? Yeah? I hope so. Now, these two experiments are very early days, but I find them really exciting. And I'm sharing them, even though they're early, to show the kinds of investments that we're making across Flutter, across Material, across all of Google. We know it's really hard work to bring that best of creativity and technology together. We know it's hard to get to the fun part of making your digital worlds real, but we're committed to helping you in that journey. I'm personally really passionate about this mission. This mission is why I feel like I do have my childhood dream job. And I think that mission is one that unites all of us here. We are all here because we believe we can make our imaginations real. Thank you.
Macedonia during winter gets polluted 20 times over the EU limit. But people don't know how bad it is. In order to tackle that, I created Air Care. And thanks to Flutter, the features are consistent and I can get updates really quickly to all of my users.
Jumbo, with Flutter, I found it very easy to learn.
Now, thanks to Flutter, I'm an Android, iOS, and web developer.
I
I designed a ticket station app which lets you buy, sell, explore, and even find a ride the event you're going to.
What really sold it for us was the stateful hot reload.
Our latest app, Splashpad, is going to enable anyone to write music.
In the Radio app, users can build custom training plans. Dart was a breeze, the documentation was wonderful, so things look polished right out of the gate.
The Kerala Rescue app was created during the floods of Kerala. Since they already had a website, I could directly use the web views in Flutter, and it helped a lot of people.
I am a solo developer working on a fitness app called Totally Strong. I came for the cross-platform ability, but stayed for the wonderful developer experience.
We have developed a number of apps for international and Sri Lankan market, 6 to be exact. The reason why we went with Flutter is because of its amazing community.
The Flutter community is super friendly and you can build complex apps in almost no time.
Thank you, Flutter.
Thanks, Flutter.
Thank you, Flutter.
I love building Flutter.
For now, Dash and I have to get back to work. Should we use a container or something else?
Please welcome Tim Sneath.
Thank you so much. It's just great to be here for Flutter Interact this year. Whether you're here in person, here in Brooklyn, whether you're attending one of the over 500 viewing parties around the world from Lagos to Istanbul, whether you're watching on the live stream, or whether you're catching the highlights on YouTube, welcome. Our goal for this year's event is to highlight the creative expressivity of Flutter as a platform for interactive content. We want to give you a sense today of the range of capabilities as a tool for designers, for developers, for creative coders. Whatever you call yourself, if you care about building beautiful, native experiences for any device that paints pixels to the screen, we want Flutter to be a canvas for you. So we're going to start by talking about our vision for Flutter. We shipped our first release of Flutter a year ago, almost to the day, and that first release focused exclusively on mobile devices, on building apps with a single code base that run on iOS and Android. But today, we're focusing on a more complete vision for Flutter as a portable, multi-platform SDK for pretty much anywhere you might want to paint pixels on the screen. And that portability of platform is ever more important. You know, we live in a world where internet-connected devices are pervading every area of our lives. Many of us transition throughout the day between multiple devices, phones, watches, and other wearable devices, tablets, desktops or laptop computers, televisions, and increasingly smart displays like the Google Nest Hub. And so in this emerging world, the focus starts to move away from any single individual device towards an environment where your services and software are available wherever you need them. As Matthias has mentioned, we call this ambient computing, and this is the world we built Flutter for. Flutter is the first UI platform that is designed for this ambient computing world. And this vision is unique to Flutter, a portable toolkit for building beautiful, native experiences wherever you might want to paint pixels on the screen. So with Flutter, instead of being forced to start your application development by asking, where do you want your app to run, and having to staff a team and skills and everything else, starting with that question, we want you to be able to begin with a different question. We want you to be able to focus on what you want to be able to build. And in this multi-device, multi-platform world, Flutter is providing you with a framework and tooling for creating user experiences without compromise on any device or form factor. You know, we want you to be able to start with your creative vision and make the decision on your target platform later. We want you to be able to solve problems for all your users, not just those who happen to have the same device that you have. And we want you to be able to build beautiful, tailored user experiences and user interfaces, not just the boilerplate UI that matches someone else's design system. Flutter is designed for beautiful applications, giving you control over every pixel on the screen. It's fast, we're powered by the blazing fast skier graphics engine, the same one that we use in Android and Chrome. And it's productive, with features including stateful hot reload that let you make changes to your running app and see the results in real time. It's open, with a BSD-style license that encourages forking and experimentation, and an ecosystem of thousands of packages covering everything from Firebase to Google Fonts to Bluetooth to SQLite. And so that is Flutter. Beautiful, fast, productive, and open. The first UI platform designed for delivering tailored experiences in an ambient computing world. It's been great to see how Flutter has flourished in the short time since its initial release. Already, well over 1 million developers are using Flutter for apps both large and small. And we've seen billions of installs of Flutter apps to date. Last month, GitHub published their State of the Octaverse report. And as the largest site for open source, of course, they have unique insights into the open source community and trends amongst adoption. And we were surprised and delighted to see Flutter be the #2 fastest growing open source project on the site, having tripled in size across the last year. And also to see the Dart language that powers Flutter be the single fastest growing language that they measure. Yeah. And that popularity is also visible in this list of GitHub's most starred projects. Last year, we were proud that Flutter was one of the top 40 projects. And this year, it's one of the top 10. You know, even at Google, starting an open source project from scratch is a risky endeavor and a bit of a risky career bet. So this is just our chance to thank you for your support and interest. We don't take it for granted. And we continue to work every day to try and build a better project for you. Thank you so much. So the rest of this morning, of this session, is divided into 2 main chapters. Firstly, we're going to start with our progress on bringing Flutter to more platforms, this ambient computing vision. And then secondly, we're going to talk about the work that we've done to make Flutter a canvas for creative expression, unlocking designers and developers to build whatever experiences they have in mind. So let's start with the first of these 2, Flutter on every screen. And today, in our journey towards Flutter delivering on that ambient computing vision we've described, we're focusing on 3 core form factors that make up the bulk of our work today: mobile, desktop, and web. And up till now, as I've mentioned, many people have thought of Flutter as a mobile framework. So we're going to start there, and then we'll expand out. Today, I'm pleased to announce the immediate availability of Flutter 1.12, our latest stable release of the Flutter framework. Yeah. Flutter 1.12 includes over 1,500 pull requests, representing the work of hundreds of contributors, both from inside and outside of Google. And there are many more new features than I can do justice to in a short while, but a few highlights. We have dark mode, full dark mode for iOS, including all the new acrylic materials and the adaptive colors, the beautiful work that Apple's done around dark mode. We have new widgets that help deliver pixel-perfect experiences on iPhone and iPad. We're transitioning to the new Android X support libraries on Android. We've upgraded support for Add to App, enabling you to take Flutter and embed it in an existing app, including things like preloading the engine for faster startup. We've got the new Google Fonts package that Matthias mentioned for easy access to nearly 1,000 open source fonts. And a new Flutter gallery that makes it easier than ever to try out all the new widgets and experiences. We've got so much to talk about today that is all I'm going to say about Flutter 1.12 itself. This is live. It's rolling out now for download at flutter.dev. So when it comes to building apps, we have the same needs that you do ourselves at Google. Our own product teams, of course, have all these same challenges, how to deliver apps to all of these different places. And in fact, Google is using Flutter in over 20 different projects at Google, from ads to the Google Nest Hub to various startup projects. One of Google's newest and most innovative consumer products is Stadia, which brings the most powerful cloud-powered gaming experiences directly into your living room. Of course, Stadia needed a UI experience that matched gamers' expectations. So to tell you a little bit more about how they built their mobile companion app, I want to invite Roberto Scaramuzzi, who's the technical lead for the Stadia UI team. Roberto.
Hello. Thank you, Tim. My name is Roberto, and I work on the Stadia front end. So, for the few people in the audience who don't know what Stadia is, it's a new gaming platform that Google launched just a few weeks ago. Our aim is to enable everyone to play anywhere, anytime. So, where does Flutter come into this? We wanted to build a companion mobile app for Stadia. It would help gamers set up their accounts and hardware and provide a game store and social features. We wanted to support unified branding capabilities on both Android and iOS. The UI should be modern and cool to match the gaming culture, and be performant to match the high standards for quality and latency that we had set ourselves for the games themselves. Most importantly, we were working with a tight deadline. The release date had already been announced. So we started with a small team, and we ramped up fast. And let me show you what we built with Flutter in just a few months. So I talked about setting up hardware. These are the screens that allow you to set up your game controller. You know, connecting to Wi-Fi and so on. Look at the cool animations we built with Flutter. Okay, this is our home screen. It shows the games that you already own. This is the store. This is the game details page for an exclusive game, Guilt, that we have on Stadia. This is our friends page and search. Okay, and back to the home page. So, what happened? First of all, we delivered on schedule, which is awesome. One of our concerns was that we had to interact with a lot of native services. So we had to interact with game controllers, with Bluetooth, with Firebase. And we had a few concerns about that, but actually the interaction went super smoothly. As I said before, we want to build a platform that everyone can play on. And we launched in 14 countries, almost as many languages. And Flutter's capabilities made building in accessibility for disabled gamers into much of the app. And most of all, everybody's happy. We very much hope our users are happy. But also, the developers are happy because of the development cycle, because of the platform. And UX and product are happy because they see the vision come to life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roberto. That is so cool. I'm really thrilled that Stadia chose Flutter. Of course, many companies outside Google are also using Flutter for their app development. If we move to the next slide, one example that we're calling out today is eBay. Looks like we may have some eBayers in the house. This week, they launched their brand new app for car enthusiasts, and eBay built this app from scratch using Flutter. We're thrilled to have eBay on board. And another recently released example of Flutter on mobile devices comes from Splice. Splice offer an audio library of millions of sounds, loops, and presets that help musicians bring their ideas to life. And so here to tell you a little bit about that is their principal engineer, Angelina Fabro. Welcome, Angelina.
Hello, Brooklyn. Hello, everybody on the live stream. I'm Angelina Fabro, and I am a principal engineer at Splice. I'm also the technical lead on our mobile applications team, and I'm here today to tell you the story of how we built our new mobile app using Flutter. So what is Splice? Well, imagine that you're a musician or a music producer and you're working on your next bangin' track, or perhaps you're in a project where you've been given a very, very specific creative brief. And you're looking for the exact right sound to fit the feeling or the mood or what your client is looking for. So Splice has a giant library of rights-cleared samples, bits and pieces of music that you can use in your track. Everything from drum loops to piano chords, trumpet licks, sound effects like laser zaps, even the sound of London in the rain. So we have sounds and ideas from thousands of well-known artists as well, such as Steve Aoki and deadmau5. Splice helps you find the right sounds when you need it so you can stay in the creative flow and finish your track. But why build a mobile application for a process that for most music producers is primarily a desktop-first experience? Well, think of the experience on mobile for musicians a little bit like photo filtering apps on your phone, right? Like you might take some photos, you swipe through the filters, that looks kind of cool, and you experiment, you get some ideas, some inspiration. But the real photography work for you happens later when you're at your desktop. So we had a hypothesis. It would be useful for you to build your library of sounds on the go so that you could use them later. Now, to validate this hypothesis, we chose to build our mobile application in Flutter. After trying it, we fell in love with the developer experience. For us, separate iOS and Android teams was going to be a non-starter. The speed to validate hypothesis was critical. We were excited by the technology, and especially by the promise of native performance deployed from one code base across multiple platforms. And since Splice really is a multi-platform experience, we're investigating it for use on the desktop in our desktop application in the future. So let's take a look at the app. All right, so what we're looking at here is the Splice home. And at the very top, you can see recent releases. These cards that I'm scrolling through are sample packs. And you can think of a sample pack kind of like an album of samples. Below that, we've got our top packs. That's the stuff that is most popular right now on Splice. And below that, we have a selection of content that's been curated for me today. So what am I feeling like? Let's take a look at this dance hall pack. All right, that slaps. Let's click on the download button and add that to my Splice library. Maybe one more? How about some steel drums? Okay, all right. But you know what? I woke up in a whole mood this morning. I want to look for a sound that captures that mood. I was watching the end of Evangelion recently, so I've been watching some anime. And I'm looking for a sound today that is really going to capture the feeling of a slide transition or a segment change in a keynote presentation. So let's go over to Splice Search. And I want something cartoonish, yeah. So let's look for anime shimmer. Let's see what we get. Okay, there's a lot of results. What about this one? That's pretty fun, but that's a little more melodic. I want something that's percussive. So what about, that's the one. That's the one right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the download button again, and as mentioned, that puts it into the Splice library. And what I end up with is this giant list here showing all my recently added sounds. What's fantastic about this, though, is that as I download them on my mobile, they're there for me when I end up at the desktop application. Everything syncs automatically, so that when I'm in the flow making music, Splice is right there with me. All right. So what did we learn from all of this? Well, we learned that our hypothesis is actually a really good one. The mobile application has been officially launched for about a month, and it's already driving a really significant amount of downloads across all of our surfaces. We know that the Flutter community is really awesome. Whenever we had a problem or a question, the developers on this project, self-included, this was our first time using Flutter. Community was super supportive to help us answer questions, and so was Google as a partner. My conclusion here really is that Flutter is incredibly powerful. We're excited about its future, and especially about building the next generation of features for the Splice mobile app. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angelina. OK, so that's a quick rundown of Flutter 1.12. We're now going to shift gears and start talking about Flutter on desktop and web. And we'll start with desktop. We've made a lot of progress on the desktop, with growing support for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Supporting desktop apps requires work in 3 core areas. Firstly, we have to build the tool chain and the host support to enable execution of Flutter from a new operating system. Secondly, we have to expose new input mechanisms like keyboards and mouse pointers and buttons that simply don't exist on a phone, and we have to make those available to the operating system or to Flutter. And then thirdly, we have to do some UI work to enable apps that have a desktop feeling, to have that look and feel, so that they express the desktop environment, things like resizing and different interaction patterns. So today, we're pleased to announce that the desktop support has reached alpha quality for Mac OS and is now available as part of the dev channel. So for the first time now, you can use release mode to build a fully optimized macOS application using Flutter. So an adventurous developer could now share a complete production speed executable with others. So that's the desktop. The web is even harder in some ways because of its incredible ubiquity and its support across mobile and desktop browsers. But we've seen tremendous interest in seeing Flutter produce web output, particularly since we shared our preview release at Google I/O this year. So when you target the web with Flutter, you don't have to learn a new set of skills. You don't have to fork your code into something that's slightly different. Whether you're targeting mobile, desktop, or web, you're using exactly the same Flutter framework library. You're not using a fork. You're not using a different version. You don't have to worry about differences between the platforms. It's the same code. And the magic is that because the Dart language that powers Flutter was built with the web in mind from the outset, so you can compile exactly your same code to both ARM for mobile and JavaScript for the web. And rather than shipping as a plugin, Flutter uses exactly the same HTML components as any other web app. So, for example, a text input field that has the same password manager, clipboard, cursor, emoji support, all of those things appear because it's just the same as any other HTML input class. So, again, what you get is all the power and the productivity of Flutter combined with the compatibility and the openness of the web. So today, we're proud to announce that our web support has hit the beta milestone and is ready for active development. Now, we're still working on a few things. We've got a little bit of performance work to do, a bit more browser compatibility, a little bit of desktop accessibility to do, among a few other areas. But we're ready for you to give it a try for a whole variety of different core scenarios, from things like islands of interactive content to companion web experiences where you've already built your mobile app and you want to just make it available as a web experience. I want to show you a quick demo if my machine's working, but before we do, I want to introduce one of the tools that support web development with Flutter. Rive is a designer for animated content. It's from a company that used to be called 2 Dimensions. They've relaunched themselves. They brought their existing Flare application and rebranded it as Rive. And they've continued to invest in it and grow it. And it's available now at rive.app. And so we've been using Rive and experimenting with a new Canvas kit-based backend to see what could we do if we combine the combination of Rive and Flutter's web support. So we'll just sign into this machine that seems to have gone to sleep and load the demo one more time. Let's see if this is up and running for me. Yes, jolly good. So this is a little example that the Rive team built for us, which we're calling Dash Demo. And the idea of Dash Demo is, again, just to try and push this web support and see what kind of things could we do with it. So you might just recognize this little Dash mascot. And here he is, or here she is. We've never been too clear. And I'm going to move the bird around. One of the things that's really interesting to see here, it's hard to see on this, everything you're seeing here is a different Rive object. And so at the background here, you've got textures and waterfalls. Everything has some notion of z-index, so you can see that Dash moves behind the menus, and all of this is deeply integrated here. If I slow down the speed for a moment and pull Dash across a little bit, you can see just a few of the little things that are going on. There's a whole variety of layers of animation being built into one Dashbird here. There's kind of like the wobble as the bird moves up and down. The eyes follow and track where I've clicked the mouse. You can see, the feet are moving around. There's all kinds of crazy things happening here. So we'll just bump that up a little bit back in terms of speed. And we thought we'll add a few more dashes to the screen and have them all kind of wander around the space together. And it's kind of fun just to see them all kind of hopping around here. And then we thought, well, let's sort of see how far we can push this. So we thought we'd add a few more. And you can see they're kind of all hovering around. Every single one of these is an individual Rive object with all of those layers of animation and things going on. And they kind of look at you a little bit like the Mona Lisa. I'm never quite sure whether this is good or bad when they stare at me like that. But there you can see them all kind of moving around. And I can sort of bump the speed up. And let's sort of stick that to 2 times speed and close that down again and have them all running around the screen. It's just beautiful the way that you can use these same tools, creative visual tools, to build an experience like this where the creatures just move around and a lot of fun. Anyway, that's an example of Flutter Web using the Canvas Kit experimental backend powered by Rive. So, mobile, desktop, and web. Got it? Mobile, desktop, and web, all available to you from a single Flutter code base, part of our journey towards this ambient computing vision. So I can't go any further without brief mention of Dart, which doesn't just supply our mascot, but it's also the language that powers Flutter. And Dart is Google's language that's optimized for client development. And in addition to the fast adoption over the last year that I've already talked about, we've been adding new language support for UI development. On this slide, you can just see a short list of some of the new features we've added over the last 12 months. And a lot of the work that we've done in Dart over this period has been focused on UI development, on how do we build a language that makes you productive as a developer, building beautiful Flutter experiences. So Dart also includes a suite of tools for Flutter developers, regardless of which of the various different devices you're targeting. And so to show off some examples of what Dart offers, I'd like to invite 2 of my colleagues, Chris and Zoe, to the stage. Hi there, you two.
Hey, thanks, Tim.
We've been investing a lot in tooling over the last year. And today, we have a few new features we'd like to show off. Some of you may already have experience with Flutter, but I know we have some future Flutter developers sitting in the audience today. Before you commit to Flutter, you will want to give it a try. And let's see how we can let you try Flutter without installing anything on your local machine. Let's try a tool called Dartpad. Dartpad was initially created to let you play with Dart. But recently, we launched a brand new version of Dartpad that actually uses Flutter's web support to let you play with Flutter code in your browser. So to access Dartpad, you can go to dartpad.dev. And for those of you who have seen the previous version of Dartpad, you may notice we have redesigned the UI to make it look more modern. Now let's go to the samples dropdown and select a simple sunflower app, just to show you how it works. Once you do, you'll see the app running immediately in your browser. For example, oh, thank you. As you can see, it's a real running Flutter app, so you can actually interact with it. You can go to the app bar to open the drawer, close the drawer. You can go to the slider to adjust the size of the sunflower. You can also make code changes. Let's say we want to change the color of the sunflower from orange to blue. As soon as Chris makes the change, let's see if Chris can actually find that code. Yes, and you hit the run button, and you can see that change actually gets updated immediately. So Dartpad, in addition to the Dartpad playground, we have also embedded into learning resource. For example, if you go to one of our collabs or documentation, you will actually see Dartpad has now been built into tutorials. So now you can learn. Thank you. I love the energy from this room. Thank you. So now you can learn the real-world Flutter techniques, use nothing more than a browser. And we hope you find it easy and fun to use. Well, now after trying Flutter and deciding that you wanted to use for production, you would want to install the local tools. So another new feature we're announcing today in preview is called Hot UI. Hot UI lets you see the app's UI being hosted directly in your IDE and make changes there. Let's start by loading up Android Studio. And what you're seeing here is a ticket app already running in the emulator. And now let's open up the Flutter Outline View tab. It's adjusting its resolution for now. But as you click in the UI, notice the corresponding part of the code gets highlighted. And meanwhile, if you click anywhere in the code, the matching UI gets highlighted as well. And moreover, you can actually make changes in the code, and your UI will be updated. For example, now Chris is trying to change the color of the ticket app. Once he makes the change, with the existing hot reload feature, you can actually see the color gets updated within less than a second.
Zoe, that green is pretty ugly.
I agree with you, and I actually don't like it either. So let's see if we can do this better. Now this time, we go to the Hot UI preview panel and open up the color picker and change the color right there. Well, Chris is kind of picky, so okay. Do you like this better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. As you can see, as soon as Chris makes the change, your UI gets changed, and also the code gets changed as well. So Hot UI lets you directly connect your code to your UI, keeping both of them in sync as you change either. This feature will be available in Android Studio as a preview for you to try today. And our next step is to integrate it into the Dart DevTools in 2020. So no matter what IDE you choose, and then you can actually use it. Well, I've been doing a lot of talking, so Chris, why don't you come over and tell us about the next two new features?
Great. Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you.
Okay, so Zoe just mentioned a tool called Dart DevTools. And Dart DevTools is our standalone app for Dart debugging, or Flutter debugging. And so the idea of DevTools is it's separate from any specific editor, so you can choose whatever you like. And today we're proud to announce a brand new preview of DevTools, which you're looking at here. And we're very proud of this because we've actually rebuilt DevTools from the ground up in Flutter itself. So what that has done is given us the ability to implement some fun, cool new features. And so we've actually implemented a new debugging surface here in DevTools using Flutter that enables us to find one of the most common problems that you'll find when you're debugging Flutter apps. And so Zoe, if you could show, there we go. I think we've got here a layout overflow error, which is very common Any Flutter developer in here has probably seen this already. We've got this, construction zone, police line, do not cross kind of UI that makes it very easy to see that you have an error. But we haven't done a very good job in helping you figure out why you have that error or what to do to fix it. So, Zoe, let's see if we can use this new version of DevTools to fix this problem. So what Zoe's done is she's selected the component. And by the way, it turns out that the default view we had all the information you needed to be able to find this problem. However, you might have a trouble seeing it unless perhaps you all live in the matrix. For those of you who live in the real world, we have another feature we call the Layout Explorer. And the idea with the Layout Explorer is it helps you visualize your layout using important properties like width and height and flex and alignment so that you can actually see what's going on in your UI and why it's acting like it's acting. Now, one of the things that the Layout Explorer does is it looks for what might be potential problems and highlights them so that you can find them more easily. And so in this particular case, we see that the width of the child content is much bigger than the width of the parent. And so the Layout Explorer has marked that in red. Now, normally this wouldn't be a problem, but Zoe, I think we might also have a problem with our flex. So if we look at the flex property here, we see it's set to null. And so what happens is because it's set to null, the parent doesn't know what to do with that extra content. And because it doesn't know, that's why you're seeing that error. That is the definition of an overflow error. So normally the way we'd fix this is we'd go into our code and we'd start madly typing and throw in extra code or remove code and see if we could fix it magically and hope that's the right way to do it. Well, the idea with the Layout Explorer is that you can actually interact with these properties live in your tool before you even get to your code. So Zoe, I think this is a flex problem. Let's set the flex parameter and see what we get.
Ta-da.
Oh, good. It looks like our problem has been fixed. And now when we go back to our code, we have confidence, not only that we know what code to change, but also what caused the problem in the first place. So the idea of Dart DevTools is that we are continually adding new debugging services for your real-world problems so that you can fix your apps. And we hope you'll take a look at this new preview version of DevTools and let us know what you think. Okay, great. So Zoe, at this point, we have built our app with Hot UI, and we've debugged it with Dart DevTools. And we made it work great on a single platform. But Flutter is multi-platform, right? So we want to make sure that we can support multiple platforms with our single source code. So I'm pleased to announce that as of today, using Visual Studio Code's multi-session debugging, you can actually debug both iOS and Android simultaneously. So you might think, at this point, it would be a reasonable thing for us to do to fire up Visual Studio Code and show you debugging those two devices. And that would be reasonable. But it would also be boring. So when we made two devices work, we thought, how far can we take this? And we went a little crazy. So gentlemen, if you will. I give you the Flutter octopus. Zoe? So what I'm presenting here is the Mac Catalina machine running against 7 simultaneous targets. That includes Pixelbook Go, an iPhone S, an iPad Pro, a Pixel 4 XL, and an ancient Android tablet, as well as both the Windows version, or the Mac version and the web version of this app, all being debugged simultaneously from a single set of source code. And each one of these apps has their own state. So Zoe, if you interact, they're all different apps. However, because they're all being debugged simultaneously, Zoe, let's see what happens when we make a change.
All right.
And because they're all under being debugged, Zoe, go ahead and set a breakpoint. Once we hit a breakpoint, Zoe can trigger that breakpoint from any one of the devices she chooses. And when she's under the debugger, she has access to the watch window and the data tips and all the services of the debugger. And so notice here, let me guess, you use the iPad Pro.
Exactly.
And you can see the call stack here for that particular device. Now, we don't expect you to go and build your own octopus or to debug against all those devices simultaneously, but isn't it nice to know that Flutter supports all those platforms when you need them? Thank you very much. Back to you, Tim.
Wow, that is cool. The octopus. I want one of those for my own desk. Thank you again, Chris and Zoe. So that brings us to the end of our first chapter. So we've talked about things like Stadia and Splice. We've talked about new investments like web and great tooling. Hopefully you can see that Flutter's continuing to grow. But I also want to talk about another thing. I said earlier on, we want you to start not with what device you're building on, but what you want to create. So the second thing we're talking about today is how Flutter can be a canvas for your creative expressivity. Mwah! We see Flutter as being this canvas because it removes a lot of the restrictions that have plagued visually orientated developers and designers in the past. I think designers probably need something like these things. They need good performance, right? Inspiration, of course. You have to come with your own creative ideas. Powerful primitives, a platform that supports the things you need to do. Fast iteration, the ability to be able to kind of make changes and iterate in real time. And visual tooling. And so that's the kind of environment we want to build. And in this second chapter, we want to lay out some of those tools and sources of creative inspiration that we think will help you build beautiful applications. And in doing so, one of the things that I saw in the run-up, or that we saw in the run-up to Flutter Interact, that really inspired us was the work of Robert Felker, who is a digital artist who has created a series of generative art explorations with Flutter. And they combine geometry and texture and light in stunning ways. So we recorded a little video with Robert, and I'd like to play that now.
When I start a new artwork, it's just an inspiration. You just have a feeling. So between the first idea and the end result, there's just the same feeling. It's not about the visual. I'm not interested in what you see. I'm interested in what you feel. I'm Robert. My everyday job, I'm a Flutter dev and project manager. And I'm also a Flutter artist. Previously, I was kinda locked by the tool. I can do a lot of stuff, but only what the tool permits me. When I found Flutter, it opened a door inside me. Now I can really push further. Generative art is a lot of research, like a lot. It's a lot of failure. It's a lot of failure finding the color, finding the form, understanding the good behavior of light. What's really good with Flutter is the speed of the feedback. It's nearly instant. Currently, artists do not understand the full potential of the tool. When you start Flutter, you start with material design, or you start with the iOS component, and you think this is Flutter, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Or if you want to push, then you start to enter the Flutter engine, and the Flutter engine is like the jewels of the crown. Each time I start to code, I just feel joy. So some people are painting, some people are cooking. I just do Flutter. I'm fluttering.
Robert's designs are now available. You can actually buy them as framed artwork, and I love that you can now have a piece of Flutter art on your wall. So we're going to talk about a couple of tools, and to start off with one that, if you're a designer, you're probably already familiar with, and that's Supernova. And so I want to invite Jiri Tredzak to talk a little bit about what Supernova are doing with Flutter. Jiri?
Thanks, Tim. So I'm a developer. In fact, I've been a developer for the last 20 years, and most of that time was spent building beautiful interactive websites and applications. However, there was always this one thing that I really hated. It was the feeling that designers create something so amazing, only for developers to recreate it from scratch. This, of course, isn't without its problems, as I'm pretty sure you know maybe too well. Details get lost, pixels get forgotten, and it just makes everyone so angry all the time. Worse yet, however, it leads to a very inefficient process, wasting time and resources that could be put somewhere else. So here is my question for all of you. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could automate all the boring and tedious tasks in a process and instead focus on being creative once again? For the past 4 years, we've built a solution that makes this a reality, and I would like to show you how it works right now. So Supernova works off of design tools that you already like to use, like Sketch or XD. I have a sketch design here, and if I would to create it from scratch, I would probably create the project, then export the assets, export the fonts, code the layout. It's just a lot of work. So instead, I will bring this design to a Supernova. I will select Flutter, and I will also select the screen that I want to import. And once I do that, everything becomes a Flutter component. So now everything is a Flutter component. Here on the left side, I actually have editor, where I can edit the behavior of the application, while here on the right side, I have a real Flutter application running in real time. But let's do something more amazing. There are two components that I would like to change into actual components. So first is the button. What I can do is I can convert this bunch of layers into actual button, and as if by magic, it actually becomes a button. And even though it looks the same, when I click on it, it behaves like a button. And I can do the same thing with a list of speakers. So instead, I will use a grid list component. And now it becomes a scrollable list. However, it doesn't really look the same because it's scrolling horizontally or vertically, right? So I'll switch to vertical layout because Supernova exposes all the properties that you have available on all the components. I can also probably change the left insert just so it looks nice. So I think components are now pretty much done. Let's move on to the layout. As you know, every application should be responsive, but fortunately, I don't have to do that because while I was doing the components, Supernova computed the Flexbox layout for me. And so to show you that, I can just grab the edge and resize the application, and it works just like that. But I think the application is still a bit boring, so let's add some fun to it. I can also trigger animations, and because we have our own animation engine in Supernova, I can actually make animation on fly. I could create some custom animation, but for this demo, I will select one from the demo library, so just maybe some bounce in, and now when I tap on a button, it actually bounces in, and that's it. I think my application is now pretty much done, but I actually have a few more things to show you. You see, the true power of Supernova comes from a production code. And so if I click this magical button on the top, it actually generates the production code for me. And it has all the components, the entire layout, and all the assets done. And now, as the last thing, I could export it, and I can either export or I can copy-paste the code. But I actually have support for hot reload here, so I'll enable that. And once I choose the hot reload target, I can switch to Visual Studio, which is already synchronized. And now, when I restart the application and open the simulator, it actually shows the entire application. And if I go back to the Supernova, I change something, maybe make it a little more dramatic. I go back to Visual Studio and synchronize it. It will actually show the button. And that's it, the entire application in 3 minutes. I think that's pretty amazing. Yeah. And for this reason, I am now very excited to announce that full Flutter support is launching today at supernova.io. And because we think Flutter is the future of cross-platform apps, we are also making it free for all Flutter designers and developers, so you can build great apps together. But before I go, I actually have something amazing to share with you. Ever since the introduction of Flutter for Web, we've been hard at work bringing Supernova to everyone without any limitation. In the upcoming months, we'll be releasing a completely new Supernova, rebuilt from the ground up in Flutter. It features advanced support for enterprise teams, as well as code-enabled design system manager that serves both designers and developers equally. Together with Flutter, we will close the gap between design and code. I'm now really excited that Supernova is joining the Flutter ecosystem, and I cannot wait to see what you create with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yuri. I love that not only are Supernova providing tools to help you build Flutter apps, they're going to be using Flutter to build Supernova. That really, I think, speaks to, hopefully the power that we can bring. So that's one tool. And I want to shift gears just temporarily, because we want to talk a little bit about the creative experience with tools like Supernova. And one of the most inspirational people I've had the chance to work with over my professional career is Grant Skinner. And I'd like to introduce you to him now. Grant.
Well, thanks so much, Tim. I am so excited to be here. I'm getting old. 20 years. For 20 years now, I've been creating digital experiences with a wide variety of platforms and a plethora of different frameworks. Most of them are great at what they do. They let you build functional apps or functional experiences, but there have been very few that have really gotten my creative juices flowing. The first platform that I really fell in love with was Flash. I know it's kind of a dirty word now, but I loved it. What drew me to Flash was that I could fuse design and code, and I could use it to build both beautiful things, horrible things, but always unique things. It also introduced me to one of the most passionately creative communities that I've ever had the privilege of being a part of. I owe Flash a lot. It really drove my love of design and code, and it let me build the company that I'm still running today. We built a reputation that's let us work with companies like Adobe and Google, Atari, and Disney. But, fast forward 10 years, Flash maybe wasn't quite as viable as it was when I started. But HTML5 was really building up to take its place. And, it was very similar to Flash. If we could imagine something, we could build it in HTML5. And so we were able to seamlessly pivot and take on this new platform. I still really love the web stack, and we still do a ton of work on it. But, it's 10 years later now, and, well, I'm standing here at a Flutter conference, so you might be able to guess where I'm headed with this spiel. But a really good friend of mine approached me a while back, and he really wanted to build an app for a game that we played together called Destiny. And at about the same time, I had a client that introduced me to Flutter. And I kind of poked around a little bit, gotten pretty interested in it. I suggested, hey, why don't we combine these things? Why don't we build a Destiny app using Flutter? And, he said, okay. So we spent the first week or so arguing about state management, because that's how you start any modern dev program. And then he started writing the data layer, and I started building the UI. In a really surprisingly short amount of time, we were able to release an app that we called Redrix for both iOS and Android. And this app made it through app review on its very first try. It's hovered between about a 4.8, 4.9 rating in general. We've logged 0 crashes on the iOS app. And we had a lot of fun building it. So, and we've had a ton of feedback from the community about how smooth it feels, how pretty it is. And so to me, this is really a testament of what the Flutter team has created. The fact that we've been able to build this with so few issues, being just a couple of people with no experience whatsoever in Flutter or Dart when we started off, and just doing it for fun in our spare time, is really amazing to me. See, to me, a good UI framework makes it easy to realize a design. A great UI framework inspires you to make that design better. And I really feel like I've found that with Flutter. I don't feel like I'm beholden to the framework. I feel like I'm elevated by it. There's a few kind of key points that for me stand out in what has made me like Flutter. The first is Dart. I was pretty new to Dart, and I tend to be a little bit cynical of new languages, but it took a lot of the best things from C# and combined with some of the things that I love about JavaScript and gave me this language that was just really easy to learn and easy to work with. Second thing is that there's a lot of existing building blocks, right? There's tons of first-party and third-party widgets. They're all open source, so I can use them as I want, or I can modify them to make them do what I want them to do. And when they don't do what I need them to do, I have really low-level access to both layout and rendering, so I can do those like special weird things that make experiences great. And when that's done, I can wrap that up in a widget and take advantage of the compositional model of Flutter and just inject right back into the normal UI. Makes it really easy to both share and to integrate. And finally, I mean, no Flutter talk is finished without a mention of hot reload. As a creative coder, I find hot reload to just be such an exceptional thing. It reduces the barrier of exploration. It makes it so much easier to play. I can iterate, I can refine, I can try things out, I can see how they look. I don't have that 1-minute compile time that just doesn't make it worth it to try and tweak that 0.13 to a 0.14 and see if it looks better. So as I was working on Redrix, I kept going back to my team and kind of sharing the things that I had learned. And I was really excited about how much my team was getting into this. Not just my developers, but even my designers seemed really interested in Flutter as a platform. So when the Flutter team came to us and challenged us to basically show off what you could do with modern Flutter by creating a series of UI vignettes, it was like a total no-brainer for us to say yes. So we did what we do. We jumped in with both feet. We started throwing together ideas. We started exploring the platform, doing research, and sketching out ideas. And this is a tiny sample. We sketched out a lot of ideas. And we specifically made a point of trying to select ideas that we wanted to build, not select ideas that would be easy to build inside of Flutter. And to me, this is important because it's really easy to make demos that are tailored to work on a new platform. It's much harder to find good ideas and then force them to work on that platform. So ultimately, there wasn't a single idea that we weren't able to realize. Like, yeah, we made compromises once in a while, but there was also a lot of cases where our idea got better as we implemented it. And I think, again, that's really exciting. I'm super happy with the end result of what we built, really proud of it, and I'd like to share a little video that we put together about them. Thanks so much. I'm really excited that we finally get to show everyone this. We've had so much fun building these vignettes. They are fully open source, and you can get information about them here and grab the source code. I really encourage you to check them out, play with them, rip out the pieces you like, throw away the parts you don't, and use them to make something really, really cool. In addition to the source code, we're planning on doing some blog posts over the next little while, talking about sort of specific things that we learned or challenges that we faced. And we're also going to take some of the little reusable chunks and repackage them as widgets, add proper documentation. Finally, we are hoping to release, we'll see what Apple does, we're hoping to release both an iOS and Android app that'll let you play around with these vignettes without having to compile the code. If you stick around, later today, I'm going to be doing a talk with one of my designers, and we're going to talk about the process that we use to conceive of, design, and ultimately produce these vignettes. I hope you can join us there. I'd like to close by thanking the whole Google team, the whole Flutter community for making this, making Flutter such a fun sandbox to play inside of. One of the things that really draws me to new technologies is the people around it, and I'm really excited to get to know you all a little bit better. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Grant. Those samples are beautiful, and you can experience some of them over in the expo area if you're physically here in person. If not, then flutter.gskinner.com. So we're getting towards the end, but one more I want to talk about. For designers, creative tools are almost synonymous with one company, and that's Adobe. Their Creative Cloud Suite is probably the default choice for any professional designer. And to talk about their experiences with Flutter, I'd like to welcome Kerry Schatz to the stage. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Tim. So, first of all, I'm excited and honored to be able to be here to present what we've been collaborating on with Google. So designers excel at creating rich and engaging designs that delight users. And Adobe XD, free by the way, enables design and team collaboration at the speed of thought, while quickly and easily targeting multiple platforms, form factors, and surfaces, the epitome of ambient computing. This is a perfect fit for Flutter's ability to deliver beautiful experiences across multiple platforms. Now, the problem with that is that translating these designs to code is a huge pain point, especially when you have to do it time after time after time when the design changes. So to help, we have collaborated together with Google to create a plugin for Adobe XD that exports real Flutter code that a developer like you or I could use immediately without having to reinterpret the designer's intent. I'm excited to give you an early look at what this looks like, so let's dive right in. So here, I have my Visual Studio Code environment already set up. On the left, I have my iOS simulator running. I already have an app started, and I also am running the Dart Code plugin for Visual Studio Code. I also have Adobe XD running. Now, if you're not at all familiar with Adobe XD, it is a tool for designing at the speed of thought, user experiences for screen design across all sorts of platforms. And I have a small design here, a small snippet from Grant's designs for his application. So what I want to do here is just show you the power of this plugin. This plugin lives inside the plugin panel, and it will be available when we release it through the plugin manager. You can simply do this in application, search, install. You don't even have to restart XD. So let's show you how this works. I'm going to zoom into the badge here. And what I want to do actually is take this badge and transplant it into a more complex design. But let's start simple. So this badge has, it's a really pretty badge. So it has an icon, it has some graphics, it has some text to it. This plugin lets me do two things. I can copy this design and paste it directly as code, which is really cool. But I think even more amazing is it lets me do this as a reusable component. So it generates files automatically for me. So I'm going to select this artboard, and artboards can be used as containers for screens or reusable widgets. And I'm just going to come over here and click Export Selected for Flutter. Now, it's already told me that it's updated a file because I told it ahead of time where this file lives on my disk. Otherwise, you would have a picker. Now, nothing has changed in my sim because I need to go tell Visual Studio Code and Flutter where this lives. So I'm going to come in here. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to just use the badge, save this, and you can see immediately that we have a nearly pixel-perfect representation of what was in XD. And this is real Flutter code. So if you want to come in and inspect this file, you can do just that. And it looks just like you would expect. Super cool, isn't it? Okay, but that's not all. This is to me what is the coolest part of this. So if I come back to XD, and I'm going to drill into this layer a little bit. And I don't know how obvious it is on screen, but there's a few layers in here that have a label that starts with P and a colon. And this means that they're parameterized. So this allows me as the designer to give you a design, but the developer to supply their own data. So I'm going to come back to Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to just overwrite what the designer has given me with some of my own text. So I'm going to say best copy, maybe for the category, and teleporter for the title. And immediately it's updated inside of my simulator. What's even more cool is this separates out my data from my design. So if I, as the designer, decide that, you know what, I want to change this color, I can do that and re-export it. And immediately it's available inside of my simulator. And notice it's kept my data. So this lets me segregate out my data from my design. Really, really cool stuff. Okay, so this is a simple example, but what about something more complex? So thanks to Grant, we have this super complicated screen here. And how is this going to work, right? So I'm going to re-export it, this time to a separate file. I'm going to tell Visual Studio Code to use it. And just like that, we have a pixel-for-pixel representation of what was in XD. And this is real Flutter code, too. But I think there's a little bit of an empty space down here. So I'm going to take this badge and paste it in there. Copy. And I'm going to position it just where I want it. Re-export, and our badge is now in place. Super, super powerful. So I hope you can see that with this small example, how powerful this could actually be. So what we're really excited to announce is that this is going to be available open source. So we invite you to sign up at the waitlist on screen, and we will get you into that, and we're happy to have you play around. We will release to the wider community later this year. Sign up at the link on the screen to join the beta waitlist, and we can't wait to see what you do with this, with the combination of Adobe XD, with Flutter, and the XD to Flutter plugin. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Carrie. Wow, okay. So you've seen the two pieces individually and now together. Flutter as a platform that takes your code and lets you run it on any platform in an ambient computing world. Flutter as a platform to enable you to take your creative ideas and inspirations and turn them into beautiful experiences. You know, Flutter is at its heart an open source project. The value we derive for Google comes in part from the productivity gains realized from other product teams inside the company who use Flutter. But again, we build Flutter for you. We build Flutter with you. Our journey has taken us from a very mobile first focus towards this broader vision for Flutter as a portable UI toolkit. And we're going to continue to invest ourselves and with others in the ecosystem in designer and developer tools that increase both the productivity and the beauty of your finished application. But the thing that really compels me about Flutter and the community of which we're all parts is not necessarily the big apps. It's the small individual experiences. It's the stories that come from individuals, people who use Flutter to solve real problems that are personal to them. And I want to close with one example of that, a video that shows a little bit about how you can use Flutter in a very personal way. Let's roll that video.
The day Amani was born, we were very excited to meet our daughter.
Her birth was supposed to go as normal. It was a very normal pregnancy.
I mean, I look back and it is the happiest day of my life and the scariest day of my life, all wrapped up in a 24-hour period. When she was born, they can't get her oxygen level higher than about 80 to 85%. And they said it has to be in the high 90s. They decide that they're going to take her to the ICU or NICU. They told me she has a heart condition and she had open heart surgery. At 6 weeks, Amani finally came home. She might have been in the home setting, but she brought the hospital with us.
First year of her life, it was pretty grueling. She had her cardiologist, general surgeon, an ophthalmologist, a physical therapist, a feeding specialist, and an allergist.
It felt like she had more providers than most people would have in their lifetime.
Just thinking to myself, when is it all gonna stop? We found out about her eyes and we needed to start patching to help strengthen the eyes so that it did not develop into amblyopia, or lazy eyes as it's commonly called. Patching shuts off vision to one eye so that the other eye can get stronger.
We had to keep track of how many hours a day she was being patched. I would ask Danica every day, hey, did you patch Amani? And I felt bad asking that question, knowing that Danica was already overwhelmed. I thought, let me try to use what I know to be able to influence the future, even if it's in a tiny, small way. Patch Me was an idea to help us communicate better so that we could share information about the patching schedule right around the same time frame. Being a software architect, I saw this new technology called Flutter. It helped me to connect the dots to say, hey, I want to do this. I would wait till Amani was in bed and then take maybe an hour or two a night. I saw the Udemy course by App Brewery in collaboration with the Google team, so I felt like that was the right way to learn Flutter. Over the years, I've worked on all kinds of stuff, but Flutter has been the framework that I've been productive in the fastest. I was able to make Patch Me in a short time frame.
The awesome thing about the Patch Me app is that now gives some very objective information to give to the care providers, where before, sometimes you underestimate or overestimate it.
We realized that there is a need for this outside of our home. I decided that I should publish it to the App Store.
My hope is it'll definitely spread throughout the US for all, even the world.
Flutter allowed me to create Patch Me without having to sacrifice on either the app and its functionality or my family and my time with my family.
What the app gave back to me was a lot of control. I have the best life partner, and certainly children with special needs. It can either create a distance between parents or it can draw them closer, and I'm very happy it brought us closer.
Amani has overcome so much in her short life. All the pictures, when we look back at it, we see how fragile she was. And you look at her today as a baby and she's a daredevil. She is determined and headstrong. And my hope for Amani is that she continues to thrive and we as a family continue to thrive. She has changed me to the core. Now I want to spend my time in a productive way to be able to give back, and Amani has taught me that.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Ask Flutter Q&A here at Flutter Interact. As you just saw, Google's been putting a ton of effort into making Flutter a great way to build beautiful apps. But Flutter's an open source project. It's supported by a whole community of coders and designers and YouTube creators and sample authors and everything else. And if you're watching this live stream with us right now, you're part of that community, and we want to hear from you. I'm Andrew Brogdon from the Flutter Developer Relations team, and I've got a few friends up here with me.
My name is Kate Lovett, and I'm with the Flutter engineering team. Andrew and I will be your co-hosts for this session, and we also have a moderator who is collecting your questions for us.
I'm John. I'm from the Dart Developer Relations team, and I'll be answering your tweets and questions in the live chat.
Yeah. So if you have a question for us, that you want some more detail on something, or you have a question about something you just saw in one of the keynotes, tweet it with the Ask Flutter hashtag, or post a comment right here on the YouTube live stream.
We'll also be having a number of special guests that we'll be interviewing during these sessions, and we are joined now by our first guest, Matias Duarte. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so most of you just saw Matias in the keynote a few minutes ago, and we have some viewer questions that we have sourced, and we're going to start asking them. So
yes.
Kate, I think
All right, I'm excited.
I do. I actually pulled this one off of Twitter just a little bit ago from Sunil. They would like to know, what is the future of Flutter, which of course we've heard a little bit about today in the keynote, but in particular, what are some of the challenges that you think we're going to be facing as we get there?
Oh, for sure. Thanks for the question. I really do think the future of Flutter is creating a tool that can help everybody reach a consistent experience wherever they are, really trying to move away from being burdened by the technology, thinking about the technology first, thinking about your constraints first, and really focusing on what is it that you're imagining in terms of an experience, and just focusing on those parts of the problems. It's that like ultimate creative potential that I find really inspiring about Flutter, and what I want to help in any way that I can. What was the second part of the question? I forgot the second part.
Well, I get the second part of the question involved, what kind of challenges do you think that we'll be facing? But I think you've been answering to that quite a bit.
I mean, I feel always one of the great things about working at Google in general and working with all the talented people and all these teams is they're really focused on what the users or the customers really need, what they really want. So our challenges are really all your challenges, all the developers' challenges. You tell us where your pain points are, where your headaches are, where you find things that are not fun that you wish the drudgery was taken out of. And those are the problems that we want to solve.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So I actually have a question that sort of builds on something you just said and something that we heard in the keynote, which was you were talking about Flutter seems to be targeted at removing pain points and removing sort of drudgery from application development and allowing people to spend more time on other things. I'm curious, what specifically is the work that you imagine Flutter being able to take off of a developer's plate, and then what do you imagine them doing with the time that they save that way? What are you looking forward to seeing people build?
That's a great question. I was just talking about this actually earlier with Grant, where we were both talking about how the kind of not just the speed of development and the speed of feedback in Flutter, but in general, like having access to the right abstractions and to be able to add, whatever extra nuance or little detail you want really easily. What that creates is a space for exploration and creativity. Okay. Because normally, you're working under deadlines, you're working under constraints, right? Nobody has an infinite amount of time to just do whatever they want, right? You're trying to solve a problem. And the faster you can try things, the quicker you can get to that point of realizing, hey, this is pretty good. I like this, but what happens if I turn this just a little further? Let me see what that looks like. Or, whoa, what happens if I invert this now? And like, wow, that's really unexpected. That's really delightful. Or, I thought this approach was going to work. We assemble it quickly, and then you're like, oh no, that's really missing something that the users need. We need to find a way to, again, kind of push the boundaries and find a new solution, right? So for me, the speed and the ease and the kind of like mental model affinity of how you're thinking about a design problem, all of these things directly contribute to creativity. That's what they unlock. So it's basically removing blockers to creativity.
Interesting.
It's fantastic. And you know, in answering that, you mentioned something about delightful experiences. And I actually saw earlier another question asking, how would you define a delightful experience?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that there is one right answer, but I always find that the it sits at this intersection that we're always looking for between the form and the function, between satisfying the user's practical needs, but also satisfying their emotional needs. How can something surprise you, delight you, and make you feel good, feel natural, feel easy? We really are spending so much time in these digital experiences that they are digital worlds. They're an expansion of our world. We are living in kinds of virtual realities, and we should make those worlds wonderful.
It's fantastic. Very well said.
Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for right now with you. So if you just leave your microphone right there, thank you so much for joining us.
Have a good time as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
you so much. Good to see you.
All right.
Well, I think it is time for Andrew and I to take some questions ourselves. So make sure you're using your hashtag. Yes. John, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, this question comes from Twitter. It's from Javier Mendonça. This person is from Stockholm, Sweden. And the question is, if you want to achieve a native look and feel on iOS and Android, how do I do that in a good way without putting if-else statements all across my app, for example?
Interesting. That's
I'm so
really
glad
good
somebody
question.
asked about this.
Well, of course, there are a lot of things that automatically are taken care of for you when you are working across multiple platforms, such as with iOS and Android. You'll see scroll behavior and list views that are what you would expect. Like in iOS, you'll get an overscroll. In Android, you'll get a nice glow. But there are some cases where you're going to want to make decisions for yourself, how it's going to look on different platforms, which you talked about a little bit in I.O., didn't you?
Yes. We had a talk on iOS development at I.O. this year, and I sort of tried to squeeze in a little bit about this at the end, and I wish I'd had more time. I think if-then, which was the if-then statement, which is sort of the crux of this whole thing, right? Like, if you want different behavior on different platforms, right? Somebody, somewhere, has to write an if statement, right? Or a switch statement or something like that. And so the question is, where does that if-then live? You know, where does that statement live, right? And so in the cases that Kate was just mentioning, right? The SDK, for some things, can write that if statement for you, right? If the list scrolling physics, right? Everybody on iOS, more than likely, is going to want to have the bounce, more than likely. Everybody on Android, they're going to want the material glow that everybody's familiar with. That's 99% of your devs. And so that if-then is baked right into the Flutter SDK. But there are so many other ways that you can adapt to the platform, and different apps are going to want to make different decisions. So one of the ways that we've seen people have success is to make a widget whenever you have one of those decision points to encapsulate the decision that you make as a developer. So for example, if you wanted different navigation on iOS versus Android, right? So you wanted a material drawer on Android, but for iOS, you wanted like a bottom navigation bar with separate navigation stacks for each one. You can make a widget that checks the platform and then builds one thing on one platform and the other on the other, and then they both turn around and build the same content to go into those navigation panes, you know?
It really kind of encapsulates it and keeps it clean that way.
Yes, encapsulate is a great way to put it. So you have the, widget should be single purpose, should handle its one little job, and a good job for a widget is to encapsulate that kind of decision. So you can build it once, in one widget, and then use that widget all over the place. You don't have a bunch of if-thens scattered everywhere. So thank you, Javier, for asking that question. It's a topic near and dear to my heart. I think we have time for one more, maybe a short question, John.
Yeah, so this question comes from Ethiopia. The person is Nabil Mohammed Ama. And the question is, what's the status of 3D game development in Flutter?
Sure.
3D gaming.
Yes, Salam Ethiopia, by the way. Please tweet injera recipes. My wife would love that.
I would too.
She wishes I could cook it for her. But yeah, we have a little bit of time. Let me, so the Flutter team is mostly focused on the app experience, building the 2D UIs that people use for applications. But the Flutter team is only one group of people building things for Flutter, right? There's a whole bunch of people out there in the community.
I like to think of everyone as part of the Flutter team. It's an open source, project. Everyone who's a part of the Flutter community is part of the Flutter team. And I've actually seen a number of really cool plugins that are playing with, 3D widgets. Is it possible to look one up?
Let's go into the, what was it? It was Flutter and Unity. I saw somebody, let me just Google Flutter Unity package. Yep. So right here on the laptop, we have somebody who's made a package for combining Flutter with Unity. I remember seeing like a spinning cube or something like that that somebody had rigged up a demo. There's also a couple more. Flame is a 2D engine that somebody wrote in Flutter and things like that. So, again, Flutter is a community project. It has hundreds upon hundreds of contributors, thousands when you get out to the ecosystem, and they're all doing great stuff. So even though it's not something that people in Mountain View are working on right now, there are very talented engineers building out things like that right now as well. So there you go.
Well, I think that it may be time for us to move into the first talk. We have Welcome to the Sparkle Party as our next session, in addition to material theming, which should be excellent. And then, of course, we'll be back right after that with more questions. So please make sure to send them in, #AskFlutter, and we will see you then.
Yeah, we'll see you in a little while.
Muy bien, Daniel. ¿Estamos listos ya para empezar?
Ok, estamos listos.
Excelente, muy bien. Bien, wow, qué maravilla de presentación. De verdad creo que fue bastante buena. Ya cumple un año Flutter, increíble. Estamos muy emocionados con la tecnología y lo que es capaz de hacer. Entonces, hablemos un poco sobre lo visto.
Sí, claro.
¿Te parece si nos das tu comentario general primero y luego hablamos un
Claro,
poco?
claro. Bueno, sí llenó mis expectativas. Tenía mucho interés acerca de Flutter para la web. Estaba muy interesado porque hace un año lo anunciaron y quería saber qué avances habían tenido respecto a esto. Y bueno, ya han anunciado que está saliendo del alfa y pasa a beta, y ya prácticamente está listo para empezar a hacer aplicaciones casi que en producción. Entonces eso me llamó mucho la atención. Recalcar nuevamente todo lo que significa Flutter, todas las tecnologías o todo el ecosistema que cubre, ¿verdad? Que es un mobile, desktop y web. Están haciendo bastante énfasis en eso, entonces es muy importante que todo el mundo tome nota de que con un solo código vamos a poder, o ya estamos pudiendo desarrollar para estas tres plataformas, lo cual nos hace muy productivos a nivel de desarrollo de software. Y también me llamó mucho la atención la parte de los DevTools. Han avanzado bastante en eso. Yo no lo he traveseado tanto porque sí, como que se enfocan primero en Android Studio, que funciona bastante ahí, y ya después van mejorando el plugin para Visual Studio Code, que es en la herramienta en la que yo usualmente desarrollo, pero sí veo que han avanzado bastante facilitándole al desarrollador que de forma muy rápida y muy intuitiva puedan debuguear la aplicación, encontrar errores. Ya los errores vienen con bastante más información, entonces eso igual nos hace muy productivos. Me llamó mucho la atención también los ejemplos de las empresas que han implementado Flutter y cómo en muy corto plazo han puesto aplicaciones de producción muy eficientes, y eso me llamó bastante la atención, y también las alianzas que han desarrollado con Supernova, con Adobe, en la parte de Adobe XD. Eso me llamó mucho la atención también. A mí me gusta mucho utilizar Adobe para el diseño de las interfaces de usuario, y esa sincronización que ya vamos a poder tener cuando estemos diseñando algo y poder generar el código, wow, eso es, en términos de productividad va a ser enorme, ¿verdad? Incluso si usted necesita hacer un prototipo rápido de algo, pues eso también, ¿verdad? Va a facilitar mucho. Entonces yo creo que todo lo que se ha anunciado aquí es muy positivo y es para bien de nosotros los desarrolladores.
Muy bien. ¿Y cuál es tu opinión con respecto a lo de Google Fonts? Era bastante necesario, ¿verdad?
Sí, demasiado. Casi que uno tenía que estar accediendo, metiéndose a buscar, importando los fonts, metiéndolos en assets y todo el asunto. Pues parece que ahora va a ser más intuitiva la conexión, accediendo a todos esos millones de fonts que ya Google Fonts tiene. Entonces pienso que nos va a facilitar mucho la vida, porque si tenemos que diseñar una aplicación y desarrollarla siguiendo un branding de una empresa específica, ¿verdad? Que tiene su font y tiene sus colores y todo, pues va a ser muy sencillo ya disponer de Google Fonts en esa parte, ¿verdad? Pues eso es
Así es.
buenísimo.
Y lo mismo con Material, ¿verdad? La inclusión de widgets con Material Design,
Sí,
oficiales.
también están dando mucho énfasis, ¿verdad? A todo lo que facilita tener Material Design y todas las facilidades que ofrece a la hora de diseñar la aplicación.
Así es, así es. Y bueno, la versión 1.12 de Flutter, ¿verdad? Con la que hay un montón de cosas nuevas, aparentemente. Mencionaron, por ejemplo, ahí anotaste, por ejemplo, el Dark Mode, más widgets, compatibilidad con Android X, Google Fonts y el Google Gallery. O sea, bastantes cosas con la nueva versión, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Y bueno, vimos las demostraciones que hicieron, que ahí habías mencionado, y tanto en compatibilidad con la web como en escritorio, ¿verdad? Entonces, hablando un poco de herramientas, ¿qué te pareció la herramienta de Dartpad? Y por cierto, es la que vamos a utilizar, ¿verdad? De hoy en 8.
Sí, sí. De hecho, eso me pareció genial porque uno ve comentarios en las redes sociales acerca de mucha gente que quiere desarrollar utilizando Flutter y tienen limitaciones de equipo, no pueden, que si un emulador, que cómo hacen para correrlo, que la instalación, que a veces se complica. Entonces ya esa pesadilla prácticamente se terminó. Ya utilizando Dartpad, prácticamente pueden empezar a codificar aplicaciones en Flutter y ahí verlas en vivo. Entonces eso es de mucho beneficio. Ya prácticamente no van a haber limitaciones en cuanto al tipo de equipo con el que usted cuenta para desarrollar, porque se mete a la web y ahí ya puede empezar a desarrollar aplicaciones. Pues eso es genial, ¿verdad?
Sí, de seguro que lo vamos a usar bastante en nuestros talleres y en próximas prácticas. Así que, como mencioné...
Ya uno no tiene que estar seteando máquinas y que el ambiente de una persona o el de la otra, sino que ya prácticamente lo puede tener todo ahí en Dartpad.
Sí, y me parece puntualmente útil para aprender web, ¿verdad? Es todavía pues más minimalista, más pequeñito. Genial, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué es lo que más te gustó del keynote que acabamos de ver?
Bueno, lo mencionaba, me gustó el hecho de que la parte web ya esté disponible, porque, bueno, sabíamos que estaba en versión alfa, yo era uno de los que no me la había metido, quería esperar un poquito, que estuviera más maduro, como para decir, ok, ya, empecemos a hacer cositas. Entonces, eso, igual que a mí, me imagino que a muchos otros, les da la luz verde para empezar a travesear un poquito con la parte web, que considero que ese es uno de los mayores fuertes, poder tener con un solo código, prácticamente lo mismo que ya usted sabe para desarrollar aplicaciones móviles, es prácticamente lo mismo para verlo en el web. Entonces, va a ser de mucho beneficio poder desarrollar aplicaciones que se vean en todas estas plataformas. Y desktop también, ¿verdad? Están anunciando que ya está disponible la versión alfa de desktop para iOS, y eso también, ¿verdad? Eso todavía se utiliza. Habrá muchas aplicaciones que necesitan ser de escritorio, aplicaciones empresariales, y entonces eso también ya abre muchas oportunidades a los desarrolladores de diversificarse y poder ofrecer servicios en cualquier plataforma prácticamente.
Así es, y es increíble, ¿verdad? Que solo ha pasado un año, parece que fuera una década de progreso, es maravilloso.
Van muy rápido.
Sí,
la verdad.
Sí. ¿Qué irá a pasar en 2-3 años? Imagínate.
Sí, estos avances a veces uno los ve en otros frameworks, pero se toma su bastante tiempo, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Aquí va muy rápido. También me llamó mucho la atención esto de, como lo mencionaba hace un momento, de Adobe XD, porque es una herramienta muy popular en la parte de los diseñadores, y eso va a cortar, digamos, la brecha que pueda existir entre diseñadores y desarrolladores, porque prácticamente va a generar toda la parte de código, va a haber un poquito más de interacción entre estos dos roles y va a ser más fácil la vida para todos.
Así es. Sí, me encantaría trabajar en un proyecto en conjunto con un diseñador que use XD y tenerlo así sincronizado, sería maravilloso. De verdad que sí. Bueno, solo queda, yo creo, invitarlos entonces el próximo miércoles a la segunda parte de nuestro Flutter Interact. Sí. Así que los invitamos a que asistan. Y vamos a estar haciendo prácticas y hablando sobre todo lo que se va a mostrar hoy durante el resto del día. Entonces,
sí, vamos a tener varias charlas ahí. No olviden suscribirse en el Mira. Vamos a rifar 10 cursos de Flutter. Entonces tienen que inscribirse en el Mira y asistir, y tienen la posibilidad de ganarse un curso completo de Flutter, que es bastante amplio, bastante bueno y cubre un montón de temas. Y los que no se le han metido, pues este puede ser el punto de inicio para que empiecen a desarrollar con Flutter.
Así es, muy bien. Sería todo entonces. Muchas gracias, Daniel, y nos vemos pronto entonces la otra semana. Hasta luego.
Gracias a todos. Hasta luego.